Hey guys, Kaz here, and today I'm doing my October wrap up. So I read quite a few things in October, but I feel like this is going to be quite a small wrap up because a lot of them count as one thing. So let's just kick right in. So first of all, I reread all 12 volumes of Chew. This is my favourite comic series. October was my birthday month, so I was like, hey, let's just reread that. Yeah, there's 12 volumes. I'm just going to hold up number 1 because this is just not necessary. So Chew is set in this wacky world where people have weird food-based powers. Our main character, Tony, if he eats anything, he gets a psychic impression of it. So if he eats an apple, he knows what pesticides were used, what the tree was like, when it was picked, all that business. But also, if he eats a bit of human flesh, he knows what happened to said human. So that's kind of where this story goes. A lot of cannibalism. But also in this world, there's a pandemic that's happened, so it's kind of on the nose recently. On the reread, in here, something happened with chicken, so millions and millions of people across the world died, and then chicken is prohibited. So he's part of the FDA who go around and make sure people aren't cooking and producing and selling chicken. And then other stuff ensues. And it's a bit crazy, and it's very sci-fi and weird and wonderful and wacky. And the art is so good in here. So here's the sort of artwork we have in here. I love Rob Guillory's art because there's always loads of fun stuff in the background, so you have to look at each panel really well, and then you see all the fun little nods of stuff in the background. So yeah, great series, reread that. The first time I read Chew, it was like over a period of, I think, a couple of years, because I would get a volume and then it would be like many months until I get the next one. So it was fun to read it all in one go. If you haven't read Chew, read it because it's really good. After that, I read Deathstalk's Kettle Street. This was on my 2020 TBR because it's a Kindle book that I've had for ages, and I did talk about it a little bit in one of my recent videos, disability recommendations, so check that out if you haven't already. But basically, Deathstalk's Kettle Street is a cozy mystery where people keep dying on a street under non-suspicious circumstances. So everyone thinks it's just accidents or coincidences, all these people die, and they're all very specific in things that they do normally, so it looks like an accident. But then our main characters find out that it's probably not an accident, it's probably a big fat murderer going on, doing all the murders. And the main characters, there's 2 of them. One of them has OCD and one of them has cerebral palsy, and I feel like both of those things are done well. I definitely didn't suspect the murderer who did the murders. It took me right till the end. I was like, oh, that person, no way. And yeah, it was a fun time. I don't really read this sort of genre very often, but it was more sort of the disability rep in there and the mental health rep that I thought, oh, that sounds interesting, so that's why I picked it up. And I'm glad I did, because I did very much enjoy it. Maybe I should read cozy mysteries more, who knows? It's just not something I ever think to pick up, even though I really like crime TV shows. But yes, definitely worth a read. So during October, I got an email from somebody and they mentioned this poem book. Again, I don't really read a lot of poetry. It's not something I lean towards because I feel like I don't get it a lot of times. But this sounded really interesting, so I said, yes, I would like to read that, please and thank you. And that book was White Knuckle by Stephen Bruce. And absolutely love this. Like right at the end, I literally cried. It's poetry, and it actually made me feel emotion, imagine that. But yeah, this whole collection is all about Stephen growing up. As a child, he had a lot of neglect and abuse in his family. He was homeless for a while. There's just a lot of really heavy topics in here, which is why I said yes, I would like to read that, because although I don't read a lot of poetry, I do read a lot of harrowing shit. So that was what made me think, yes, please give it that to me. And yeah, absolutely love this. Some of the poems, as soon as I read it, I had to read it again because I was like, wow, that is so good. And apparently I like poetry, who knew? I think I've only read 1 or 2 collections before in the past and they've been disappointing, but I love lyrics in songs, so I knew that I like words. I just hadn't found a way in poetry that I enjoyed it yet. But this one definitely was a thumbs up for me. Or a fist knocks. The ones that I enjoyed the most in here were the ones that sort of juxtaposed these harrowing things that were happening with just normal everyday life. So one of the poems is about being homeless. He's talking about being dirty, no food for 3 days, blisters on his feet, a weeping knife wound, and then right at the end the last sentence is, school report card tucked inside my pocket, it says I must try harder. And it's just like all these things that he's dealing with, and then there's just that mundanity on top of it, like, oh, you need to try harder at school even though you're going through all of this as well on top of it. And it was those sort of poems that stuck out to me the most. All of them were really good, but those ones, like, as soon as I finished reading it I had to read it again. And then another one called About My Father. This is the first one where when I read it I had to start it again immediately. I'll just read it. I'm terrible at reading poems. I have no nuance, but you know, deal with it. It says, it's called About My Father. It says, the doctor said he was an old-fashioned psychopath. He said he doused a policeman in turpentine and tried to set him alight. I can believe this. I once saw him stick a short blade into my mother. As a child he suffered abuse. My grandmother said she spoilt him rotten. And that was just like, oh, spoilt him rotten. So, you know, obviously he'd grown up good, and then the psychopathic tendencies, you know, it's just that juxtaposition of being spoilt rotten by his mother and then doing all this horrible stuff as a father and as a husband or whatever. And yeah, just really good. Definitely recommend if you like harrowing shit, because as you can tell a lot of stuff happens in here, and it's told in kind of a linear sort of way. And yeah, really good. I think I wrote a better review on Goodreads, check it out there. I'm terrible at talking to a camera, which is funny because I have a booktube channel. We're about halfway through, so guess what? It's time for the best bit of the video. It's time for a little video from our sponsors. After that, I read the first 3 books in the Raven cycle. I haven't quite got to the Raven King yet, but obviously I'm going to read that this month. But yeah, this was also a reread. I can't believe it was so long ago when I read it. It was like 2016, I think. It's crazy. But absolutely love this series. And reading it again, there's just so many little bits and little foreshadowing that I didn't notice before. And that is what is so good about rereading books. You get to see all the foreshadowing, you get to see all the little bits and be like, oh, no way. That said that, and then that's that. So yeah, absolutely loved reading these 3 again. If you somehow don't know about the Raven cycle, it's about this group of 4 boys and a girl who are trying to find a dead Welsh king, and it's magical but also very character driven, and it's all about them as individuals and them as a group, and it's just really good. And if you like character driven books you will like these, but somehow some people don't like them. But that's alright because we all have our own opinions. My opinions is, love this series. After that I read Clap When You Land. I read this on ebook on my library ebook thing where you borrow the books off the library but it's on your phone, not in real life, off there. And I liked it. I didn't love it, and I think that's partly because of the way it was written. I know a minute ago I was talking about a poetry that I did like. Clap When You Land, just I couldn't understand the way it was written. Right, here's the thing. I could understand it. Obviously, I was reading it. It was fine. But in my head, the way it was written, I just couldn't put that into a sort of poetry style. It just felt like it was written normally, but with just gaps in between it to make it look like it was written in verse. And that took away from me a bit because it was written in verse, so you didn't get as much detail, and it talked about a lot of important stuff. So basically, this book is about 2 girls, one in Dominican Republic I think, and one in America, and then their father dies in a plane crash, and then they find out that their father is the same person, and it's about both of them dealing with that in the different countries with different lives and different things going on, and then also learning about each other. I thought the subject matter was really unique and something I'd never read before, and I did really enjoy that, but I felt like there were so many little bits of the plot that none of them got enough sort of specific about. There's this whole like sexual assault thing, or basically a man stalking one of them or wanting to be assaulted, and I felt like it was just glossed over a bit because of how it was written, so he couldn't go into much detail about that. And then there was just aspects of it like they tried to put too much in. If it was just the story about the family aspect, and they didn't need all this other stuff to sort of throw in more villains or throw in more plot when the plot was already really heavy and really interesting and really unique. I felt like some of them other threads either didn't need to be in there or needed to have more heavy severity about them. So yeah, I think I gave it 4 stars. Well, I gave it like 3.5. I think I gave it 4 on Goodreads, but 3.5. So I didn't hate it. I didn't love it, but I did appreciate the fact that I've read it now. Yeah, it was good. And I know some people are probably like, oh, if you know you don't like books written in verse, then why did you read it? I have read other books in verse that I very, very much enjoyed. This one just didn't work for me, and that's fine. And then last but not least, I also read like 200 pages of The Air War. And then I was meant to be reading sort of a chapter or 2 every night, and then I put it down somewhere, and you know the old saying, out of sight, out of mind, completely forgot I was reading it. So yeah, got this far in, and I'll have to read the rest of it this month on top of everything else that I've got on my TBR. I need to calm down. I need to actually read stuff, one or the other. But yeah, I'll talk about this more when I actually read it, hopefully this month, hopefully. But this is book 8 in a 10-book series, so I can't really talk about it too much. But yeah, fantasy, loads of political and fantastical stuff going on. It's 200 pages in. I'll talk about it more in a proper wrap-up when I actually read it. But I read that, so I thought I'd mention it. It's 200 pages. And there we go, that was my October wrap-up. And it's kind of funny because in my October TBR I was all like, oh, it's my birthday month and I read what I want to. But then in my head I was like, I should probably read specific things rather than just reading what I want to. So that didn't really go to plan. But I mean, it's fine. I reread all of Chew, and I was rereading The Raven Cycle. Didn't really get many books off my TBR though. So yeah, let me know down below what you read in October, or if you've read any of these. Let me know what your thoughts were, all of that in there, and I'll reply. If this is your first video by me and you enjoy it, then please check out some of the others, and if you continue to enjoy it, then please subscribe, that'd be awesome. Anyway guys, I'll see you in a few days with another video.